All right. Well, here we are again, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Um, and I'll just start with the formalities. If you could give me your full attention for the emergency exits. And I want to welcome you all to the Discuss, Learn, Practice series here at the NeuroDevelopment Institute, which I will say NDI for the rest of the time because it's a little bit shorter. The NDI is a not-for-profit learning community, and our mission is to create awareness of how understanding the human brain can improve life for individuals, communities, and the planet as a whole. My name is Deirdre Morrison, and I'm co-hosting this event with my colleague, Gabriella Benku. And if you want to find out more about either of us, you can find those details on the NDI website. So tonight, we will be dividing this into three parts, really. The first part, Gabriella will take you through one of the models that we're talking about, and then I'll take you through the second one. And after that, we'll discuss them both using some guiding questions. And if you'd like to share your insights or observations, we would love to hear from you. Now, on that note, we're all naturally approaching these conversations from very different perspectives and experiences. Now, we're committed to holding a psychologically safe space for all participants, so we request that everyone remains open, curious, and most of all, kind. And please be aware as well that sometimes when some of the concepts that we talk about are brought into our awareness for the first time, we can feel some psychological or emotional discomfort. And this is normal, but please be aware of changes in your state and how the concepts and ideas are affecting you and the things that they might bring up for you. Now, the questions or observations, if they come up for you during the presentations, please put them down in the chat because that really adds depth and value to the session, and we'll review them during the discussion. And I think that is about all I have to say. And now it's my very great pleasure to hand you over to Gabriella for our first model. I'm going to pause that and stop my share.
Thank you, Deirdre. I'm going to try to share. Okay, just I need a confirmation. Can you see?
We're good. We're good.
Okay, wonderful. So the SCARF model. So the SCARF model was developed in 2008 by Dr. David Rock, who is the co-founder of the NeuroLeadership Institute. Some of you are very familiar with it. I can see some faces who are very familiar with it, and others may be hearing it for the first time. So I'm going to touch on what this model is, just to create a baseline for everyone who is here to have a discussion. So it's a framework for describing what's going on in our brains during social and human interactions and when emotions naturally become activated. So it's an acronym, and there are 5 domains, 5 ideas: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And each one can be negative and positive. So when I'm looking the other side, that's my other screen, and I'm just learning to handle that. So be patient. So the SCARF model is built upon 3 central ideas. The overarching organizing principle of the brain is to classify the world around you into things that will either hurt you or help you stay alive. It's an evolutionary carryover. So when the brain detects a threat that could endanger your life, your non-conscious take action because your brain is also a prediction machine, and it helps you to stay away from the threat. Just think about a ferocious dog charging towards you. Immediately you start escaping. Now, when the brain detects something that could help you survive, then basically you non-consciously, you want to take action toward that reward, and you want to repeat that. So primary reward can be, for example, food or love. I mean, we love going back to these. Now, the bad news is bad is stronger than good, and the arousal from danger comes on faster. It lasts longer, and it's harder to budge. I mean, if you think about running away from a ferocious dog or running after your love, the speed is definitely different. You can think about that. And also the bodily experiences with the dog, with the ferocious dog, they are much higher intensity. The threat response, so at the end of the day, is more intense and common, and many times it needs to be minimized in social interactions. The second one is that we are social. And generally, we feel more passionate about things that are social, and they have to do something with a social environment. And as David Rock referred to it, the reason for that, so this is a hypothesis, is that we survive through other people till we are about 12 years old. And so we actually, during this period, we survive by knowing who to trust and who not to trust, and how to be our parents' favorite. So the brain treats social threats and rewards with the same or even greater intensity than physical threats and rewards. So just remember, when you fell over and you hurt your knee, what was the sensation, how you could remember that? Or for example, somebody rejected you. So you applied for a job, or a love or a friend rejected you. These are very strong. And that's why we say it's pain in the brain, because it actually lights up the same areas in the brain, both the social and the physical pain. And the third one is what we need to know, and this is the third central idea, is our capacity and mental performance is reduced by a threat response and increases under a reward response. So unpleasant feelings are activated, like shame, anxiety, anger. So we get into survival mode. Our field of view narrows, and we have tunnel vision, and we are not collaborating. We are disengaged. We are anxious and stressed. But when we are in the creative or reward state, then we are more engaged, we are relaxed, joyful, and we are happy to collaborate with each other. So basically what SCARP does, it kind of pulls apart what the brain does during social interactions. Now, just some details about these domains or these ideas. So the status is about importance relative to others. So I can feel higher in status when, for example, my boss praises me in front of my colleagues, or he acknowledges or she acknowledges my achievement. But the same can happen in a relationship. Or, for example, there is when I beat my best time in running, then that's also a reward reaction. Now, if I receive unsolicited advice, my status, I feel I'm put into a lower status. So that is a threat response. Many times it could happen to all of us that we want to explain a difficult situation, and then people don't listen, but they immediately want to say, you should do this, and this is what you should have done. And this is really, that puts you down, and it's a threat response. We become, either we feel shame or we feel stressed. Now, the second one is about certainty, and this is about ability to predict the future. just 2 or 3 years ago started the COVID. Everybody experienced what it means to be uncertain. There was a big change. We were locked in. We didn't know what's going to happen to us, to our beloved ones. We didn't have financial security. We didn't know what's going to happen. So this was a really big threat for basically for the whole humanity. Everybody experienced that. Now, how can we create certainty is, for example, we give roadmaps. Now, in COVID, we were waiting for news from the politicians, right? And the system to give us the news, what we have to do. So at the beginning, there was no certainty, and then we had more and more certainty. And for some, for example, the injections, they were certainty. So it gave us that we got the jab. It gave us certainty. Now, also, when you think about it, when we speak with each other and we are very implicit, we refer to things that we think the other one should understand and the other doesn't understand, that's a threat response. But if I'm explicit and trying to be kind and direct and clearly communicate, that can generate certainty, and that's a reward response. I can generate a reward response. Or, for example, I can say, I can't tell you now, but I will get back to you by Friday. And that creates certainty, maybe even in a more certain situation. Now, autonomy is another area, and it's one of my strong areas is autonomy. I have very strong responses if I feel that my autonomy, or I don't have choices, let's put it this way. So this is about sense of freedom and choice. And before knowing this model, I always talked about freedom and choice, and now I understand what this is more about on the level of the brain. So people don't like to be micromanaged. That's loss of autonomy. And also, when you feel that stress is inescapable, you are in a situation you cannot get out of it, that's also the perception of the loss of autonomy. Also, when you have to conform with norms, social norms, for example, that can be felt, perceived as loss of autonomy. Now, on the other side, as a reward, when you have a choice, you are offered a choice, then that feels good, and that generates a reward response. Or, for example, just when you allow people to direct their own learning, so self-directed learning, or children, and also just you allow people to organize their workflow. For example, after COVID, people had to go back in some companies to the office. Now, this was loss of autonomy, because when they were at home, sure, the certainty at the beginning suffered, so there was a threat. But now, after that, they realized, oh, we have a lot of autonomy. Now I can eat what I want. I can run or do sport when I want. And when they had to go back to the office, a lot of people actually, this was a threat response and loss of autonomy. And the fourth one is about relatedness. And this is the sense of connection and safety with others. Now, when we meet someone new, when we meet someone new and someone unknown, then we feel some kind of anxiousness. And if somebody might come from a different culture, so then we can feel that we don't relate to this person as much as with my own people, my own tribe. And just to give you an example, I sometimes work with, I am from Eastern Europe. I live in France and I work in English. So sometimes I have the chance to work with people in France who come from Eastern Europe, but we start speaking in English. And generally when we meet first, because I am the trainer, so that's already a status threat. So they are in a, because I know more theoretically than they do. So when I hear that they are from Eastern Europe, I always say, oh, I'm from Eastern Europe too, I'm from Hungary. And immediately their eyes light up, because this is a reward. We are related, we are from the same place. So that's kind of balances out the threat of the status threat that the other person knows more, and the uncertainty that we meet for the first time. Now, the last one is about fairness. I don't think I have to explain that, the perception of fair exchange. And if we feel discrimination, or if we think about when we think that the ground rules are different. So for example, just let's think about the politicians. If they allow themselves more than we have, then we feel it's unfair. And so we need to ensure that, for example, if we want to create a reward response, then in a company, everybody has access to information. Maybe we want to enable groups to create their own rules. So now, what to do? What can we do with this? What is the application? So number one, we can raise self-awareness, and here you can see a QR code, and this takes you to the NeuroLeadership Institute's SCARF assessment tool. And you can, it's about 10 minutes to take this test. Before you take it, you can try to predict it. So what is your strongest SCARF domain? And then when you take it, after seeing the result, you can reflect on the result and how you can apply that in situations. In the social interactions, there are generally 2 or more people. So you can also think about, in a situation, what SCARF response I am generating here with my interaction. So what is their perception regarding status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness? And we have to think about it that we need to minimize threat first before we maximize reward, because if you remember, we are more attuned to the negative, and in particular when it's social. And finally, this tool also allows us a little bit to think before and after. So before a situation comes, you can think about it, what will be my response that activates strong emotion, and what can be the reaction of the other person. The same can happen during, when you regulate and you say, oh, this is what's happening. Now, this is more difficult, but the more you use the model, the easier it gets. I say it because I experienced it myself. At the beginning, it was all messy, and now I'm getting there. And after, because many times it happens that, there are high emotions, and then you want to understand high emotional activation. So what happened on my side and on the other side? And this gives you the vocabulary to do so. So this is, I think, what I could share in this short time about the SCARF, and I hand it over to Deirdre.
Super, thank you so much, Gabriella. Now I will do the same dance once more and set up the share for part 2. Okay, can you guys see my screen? Yep, all right. So what we've got here is another take on a very similar set of parameters. This is the Be Safe and Certain model, and that has been developed by Laurie Shook of Shook Svensson. And this is not necessarily the way that Laurie teaches it or uses it, but I think that I find this very, very helpful, partly because the name of the model tells us a lot about it. It tells us be safe and certain is effectively your brain's core mission. That's what it wants for you. It wants you to be safe and certain that everything's going to be okay. There's an awful lot of overlap between these two models, so I'll skip through quite a lot of it, but there's one critical difference. So be safe and certain, this stands for B. The B is for belonging, and that equates to relatedness in the SCARF model. Then the S is the same, that's autonomy. The sorry, it's not autonomy at all, is it? The S is status. The A is autonomy. The F is fairness. The E is where it gets different, and that is expectation. And then the certain is obviously certainty. So if I can just skip forward one. The expectations, let's pick up on that because that is the key difference. So expectations crop up so much for us in terms of how we act, react, and interact with people. Our expectations are often unknown to ourselves until they are in some way not met. Our expectations can be very unrealistic. They can be, there are all kinds of variations on expectation. Now, I think we have somebody doing a little bit of moving around there, but it's, if you know that you've got background noise, if you wouldn't mind muting, I don't think we've muted anyone tonight. So the next one then, the next slide here is just the kinds of expectations that we might be dealing with. So first of all, the expectations that I have of others. And this could be colleagues, this could be partners, this could be children, this could be friends. There are a lot of people that we have expectations of. Whether or not they are aware of our expectations of them is another thing. Whether they are willing to comply with them is another thing. And whether or not these expectations are fair or reasonable, again, of course, this is another layer that we have to explore for ourselves. Then there are the expectations that others have of me. Am I willing to comply with these? Do I want to comply with these? Do I feel that they're fair? And then finally, the expectations that I have of myself. And I think a very interesting word came up earlier, and that word is should, things I should do. And this is an absolute red flag that you're dealing with an expectation. So when you find yourself thinking, I should do something, then please stop and ask why. On what basis is this expectation formed? Now, I mean, I should get more exercise. Okay, well, what is it that is putting you off that idea in the first place? Why is it that you don't particularly want to do that? I should make more money. I should visit that person that I don't really like. Why are all these expectations things that we put on ourselves? So we have, I call it the 11th commandment, which I phrase as thou shalt not should. You can take that and do with it as you will, but it's just something to, I think, bear in mind whenever you are feeling that maybe you have got some pressure on you that is not necessarily helping. Now, I just want to go a little bit deeper into expectations as well, because former expectations and instances where expectations are played out, quite literally in this case, will sometimes stay with us and become maladaptive. So this represents my acting debut at 10 years of age. So I was in the school play. I'd campaigned very, very hard to get this role in the school play because I wasn't tall enough to play it, apparently. But the tall girls just weren't able to learn the lines. So I eventually got the role. And I was so proud of the performance that I did at the school play. I got everything absolutely right. Should have got an Oscar. It was a travesty that I didn't get an Oscar that year. But when I ran to my mom to get the praise, the reward that I, was expecting, my expectation was that this would have been a good thing. It turned out that my mom had been really embarrassed to overhear the mothers sitting beside her or behind her talking about how, this is a very Irish use of word, how brazen I was, meaning how, I don't know, cheeky or outspoken or forward, or basically I was being more more heard than seen. And this was something that made her question a lot of things about herself, not about me necessarily, but, was she being a bad mother, or, what was going on for her? But really what I got was that my expectation of a reward for having done so well and learned all these lines was actually completely cut down. I mean, I was totally shocked at the response that I got to my Oscar-winning performance. So the thing is that's 30 years ago now. No, it's nearly 40 years ago, but not quite, nearly 40 years ago. And I still have this thing, believe it or not. I actually need, if I've done a talk or if I've done a workshop or whatever, I will still need absolutely to get confirmation that I haven't in some way embarrassed someone or messed it up or anything like, because we do learn things very quickly in these situations. And the negativity bias, I think, is that maybe wasn't used as a phrase earlier, but this idea that we look more towards the threats, because obviously avoiding them keeps us alive. And again, we're in the be safe and certain territory here. So I have this little script that runs somewhere in the back of my head that I absolutely need to make sure that I have given the performance that was required, and not the one that the woman behind my mother actually saw. So there we go. That is, one of the things that, one of the reasons why I really like this particular model is because it includes that. And I think it's such an important part of our emotional landscape. The meeting of, or the not meeting of our expectations. And there's some research has been done about expectation, actually. And when people are at their happiest about a holiday, for instance, is immediately before they go on holiday. It's not when they're on holiday. It's not necessarily when they're, looking back on this wonderful holiday. It's when they are just before they've gone, and all those dreams and hopes and the romantic notions of it are still completely undisturbed. Nothing has gone wrong in any way, and they are excited by this and looking forward to it. Their expectations have not in any way been crushed. So when we look at expectation, we can also see now that we're joining the dots. And if you've been to some of our other events, you'll start to notice that when we're looking at this be safe and certain and expectation, we're also, in a way, starting to see where our predictions are coming from, because we do learn a lot from these instances, from these rewards and threats. And the more that we repeat them, the more we start to predict what's going to happen in a certain situation. There were a couple of things that I also made note of whilst we were going through the first one, and that there's another thing that we've got, which is Richard Boyatzis talks about positive emotional attractors and negative emotional attractors. And I think we'll come to these in another session, but I just wanted to mention them here. We have very common everyday terms for this, and we call them carrot and stick. And I'm sure that there are other language versions of this in the room as well. But, do you dangle a carrot in front of someone, or do you, hit them with a stick in order to get them to do what you want? So when we've got be safe and certain, we have got a lot of ways to, and again, Gabriella has already said this, so I'm not going to say too much more on it, but we've got a lot of ways to explore what it is that's going on for us in any given situation. Be safe and certain is almost like a triage tool for our emotions. We can look at it and go, okay, what is it? Is there something about my need to belong, my desire to belong here that is being upset? Is there something, am I in some way sensing unfairness? And fairness is another one actually that I do want to touch on. I know that you had that lovely description of a Gabriella about the perception of fair exchange. But I want you to think about this as well in terms of literally just an energetic exchange, and we'll go back and we'll do the thing of going back to caveman days, which of course everybody, we're always making this up. This is, we do not know this, but it feels right and we'll make it up. So if you think of a situation where someone has done an amount of work to bring in an amount of food, and someone who has not done the same amount of work is eating the same amount of food. Now, this obviously is a very line drawing sort of interpretation of what actually it meant to live in a group like that. And I'm not suggesting for a second that this is, a true account of events, but our idea of fairness now rolls out to so many things. And I remember having a discussion with a lady one day who was really, really irate about somebody who had dropped some litter, or, it was, litter bugs. And yes, she's absolutely right. People should not do that. I am not saying that she was wrong. The thing is, though, that when we dug into this, when we tried to get to the bottom of what her irateness was, it came out that it wasn't fair, that some people did not show any respect and they did not care about the environment, and they threw rubbish down on the ground and they didn't bother taking it home and putting it in the bin or taking it to the next litter bin. So it wasn't fair because she did all that. She spent her energy doing it and they didn't. So effectively, she put more care into the environment we all share than they did. So fairness is another one that it really does show up in so many places. So with that in mind, and we've started this in the comments, I think I just want to open this now and see which aspects of SCARF or Be Safe and Certain show up for you most often. And again, we can open the floor here. So if anybody has some thoughts or observations, are there aspects of this that are new for you? Let's open it up and see how we're going. I'm going to stop this share for a moment, actually, so we can see each other again. Now, let's see the gallery view. There we go. Okay. So, okay. Would anybody like to give us an idea of what it is that what is coming up for you? I think we had quite a few people saying fairness comes up a lot for you. And in the first one, can you please? Sorry. Okay. I'm just reading through the messages here. Would anybody like to go first and give us their take on these and what's happening? Gabriella, can I call on you to open this so that people can gather their thoughts maybe for a minute?
Yes. So I just gave you this example during my speech, the autonomy, and I just understood so much about my choices and about how I was a child and who I am now, that how much I want these choices. So in just recently, it happened to me that somebody said to me, we had two different foods, and then somebody said, okay, you're going to eat this, I'm going to eat that. And I assumed that it's a very, very tiny little example. So I assumed that, okay, we have only one kind of soup of this and one kind, so we just do this. And then I realized that the other soup, I could have the other soup as well. And then immediately I could feel my reaction that why didn't I have the choice to why couldn't I choose the other soup that the other person is eating? And it was so strong, it's coming up, right? It's like coming from the gut that I want to. And in the past, so now I know it's my reaction. In the past, I always said, why do you make decisions for me? Now I'm not saying that because I realize that actually it's just it's coming from the gut. So when I feel that, I know this is something that what's going on there. And the first thing I go to is autonomy and fairness. These are the two ones that for me.
And just tying these back in with previous events as well that we've had, if you notice there, you're talking about where it's coming from, that's coming from the gut. So we've got that kind of embodied understanding of where the emotions are coming from as well. And yeah, it's all part of that practice, I think, isn't it?
I mean, that's why when I was a child, I always asked, why? So they said, do this, why? Because I always wanted more freedom, and I wanted to do something else. And this was, yeah. But it comes from there, from the gut. This is what you feel.
Yeah.
What about you, Deirdre?
Which one of them is most for me? Yeah, I think obviously, like I said, I think the expectation is something that I find really useful to be aware of at all times. I find certainty fascinating though, because certainty is, I know that people really strive for certainty, and I can understand why. And I was talking to someone today, and I just got a text from them before lunch saying, 21 redundancies announced. And I knew immediately that was going to be a very stressful situation for them to be in, because there was so much uncertainty. Their livelihood effectively was on the line for those few hours. And that obviously doesn't put you in a great position for thinking clearly or being calm or restoring yourself. So on the other hand of uncertainty, there's something about it that, I don't know, my inner agent of chaos really likes, because anything can happen then. Uncertainty sometimes just brings us possibility. And yeah, might be going against the grain there, but I think that in itself is actually something that we have to look at as well. When we flip our perspective on these, if we are moving from the fear side of it, and we're now looking at what are the positive sides of all of these things. So when we've got belonging and it's not under threat, it means that we're gathering, we're bringing people, we're caring for people. And this is a very, very positive thing as well. If we are looking at status, if we're in that place where we are, feeling a positive and growth mindset about it, then status is something that we confer upon other people. We include them, like you say, when you were being the trainer at Gabriella, and you were, again, bringing people along and making sure that they felt good about their position. You can go through each one of these, and we can actually look at them as things that create different ways of being when we start to look at them beyond threat, when we start to look at them from that place of safety and security. So, status, autonomy, again, if we are looking at autonomy and we are concerned about our own autonomy, then we might look to wonder where our boundaries are. We might look to set those boundaries. We might look to respect other people's boundaries as well. Fairness, well, yeah, I mean, that's just, if you're under threat, everything is unfair, isn't it? And then when we look at this from that perspective of being in a positive place, having an awareness that is that sees the world as a place of hope and beneficial sort of beings, then fairness is something that we try to ensure for others. We are looking at creating fairness rather than seeing if something is unfair or unjust, what can we do to rectify that, is the energy that we go at these things with. Expectations, there are so many of those anyway. But when our expectations are not met, if we're willing to relinquish them, if we're willing to let them go and have grace about those, then that, again, we can see that from that above the line place. And finally, we come back to certainty, and we see that in uncertainty there is the potential for something new. There was a lovely quote used at an event I was speaking at recently, and he said that when we can move from certainty to curiosity, then we have options. And that's really, you can't learn something if you're certain. Our learning does not commence until we create an amount of uncertainty and we're willing to take on something new. So
like that.
Yeah,
I could bring also my thoughts about this scarf model. So I recall a discussion we had with Gabriela lots of time ago, and I realized when I realized that it was certainty for me that it was number one, and I couldn't realize. I mean, if we had this discussion years ago, I couldn't realize, because my life was full of certainty. I had parents, we were public servants, and it was a very, very average lifestyle, but it was certain. And I couldn't think of not being, of something, the next day to be something new. I mean, there was a kind of atmosphere of such certainty at home. It was mediocrity, but it was certain. So as I grew up, and eventually, my parents passed away, I got through a very strong divorce case. I had to take decisions about my professional life, totally starting from scratch. So there I met uncertainty, and it was a shock for me, really shock. So going through the scarf model, and I really recall the discussion that, I mean, why are you surprised? I mean, it was very, for me, insightful discussion. Why are you surprised? I mean, you were back in a house with so much certainty inside, and now you're out there alone. So what is there that you don't understand? I mean, what's not something that you don't realize? And it was obvious for me that it was a surprise, but then also it made sense that uncertainty for me is a huge shock. So it's but as you said, it can bring something totally new. I mean, it can be it can bring the breakthrough.
Thank you, Nicoletta.
So it can be also good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
I think I also resonate a lot with the certainty. That was also the first word that it came into my mind. And I think there's two reasons for that. First, as an artist, I try to like always find for creativity. I think my friend Jisoo might feel the same. Like you kind of think the certainty is not good. And I really like the quote that you brought up of how to change the certainty into curiosity. Like when you change the certainty to curiosity, that was because of that perspective. I thought certainty always as a negative thing. And the second reason is from a cultural root, I think, like for, I don't know, like Koreans, like having certainty like upfront about yourself, it seems like it's a little bit rude, or even, or it may be a woman thing too. But for me, somehow, like being certain seems like very, like taking up the space or rude, and rather I will just like give people, I was like culturally told to give other people space more, and less certain, and just open up the possibility, which can be a positive thing, which I still view as a like positivity and like a immense of power that the curiosity or uncertainty can hold. But because of that cultural or norm, I think certainty was like really difficult for me to grasp as a stable status, something that can be rewarding. But then when I was hearing from Gabriela that like that can actually generate reward, that was a little bit shocking for me, that like that can actually generate a clear response. And maybe a lot of times I was suffering of this negative thoughts about certainty, but for myself to be more like feeling safe and stable, I think that's something that I little bit need to change the perspective of how to generate a rewarding and stable status for myself by gaining a certainty. So that was definitely something that crossed my mind.
I wonder if I could throw something in here, and thank you for sharing that, Jisoo. But it just occurs to me actually as you're talking that trying to achieve certainty is really swimming uphill. It's swimming against the tide in terms of our world and the way it works. And how is it that we can be more comfortable with it? And the Buddhists have this wonderful idea of equanimity, and well, what comes, what goes. Let's see, we'll see what happens. But I'm just wondering if what would happen if we let go of certainty, if we let go of our desire for certainty. What would we do, and how would we be?
Yeah, I mean, if I can come on this, I mean, there is no such a thing as certainty. I mean, we are talking about perceptions here, right? I mean, what about shooting stars or, the universe? We are afraid of so many things. We are so fearful about uncertainty, but you are born, there is, and in this universe, there is uncertainty.
Yeah. It's almost like we're creating this resistance to the way things are by seeking certainty.
That's a created certainty as far as I see it, because for me, certainty does not exist as far as it's my perception. My perception. But as well, it's true. How can you let go if your perception is that I need certainty?
Mm.
But,
Mm.
and how to accept that I create the certainty. Actually, I can create it for myself. And yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Ellen, you mentioned expectation. Are you there?
Yep. In the, well, in your model, I found myself definitely in this part of the having expectation, especially the separation of having expectation on others, and on yourself. So like the three steps. And I think, especially my expectations to myself are very high, and I find myself being critical to myself. So what you've told about your story about the theater group and trying to get your feedback and your certainty, so it's probably a mixture of it. I have that there in a different way, that I try to get by having success or getting to certain certain little successes or smaller successes to be, well, how to express that? So to actually have this expectation fulfilled. And this is very difficult for me. And that's something I've been working on for the last probably 40 years, so much, much, much better. But as well in the expectation towards others sometimes, I'm very aware of when I get into that stage. So what Gabriella said as well, that you actually hold yourself back, like, okay, like I used to do that, but this is not me anymore. I know it better, and I see myself, I feel myself, and I have the chance to change it as well. So it's my choice, but it's still something, especially when I'm under stress, when I'm tired, then the old patterns, of course, they pop up much more.
Mm. Yeah, when we're stressed and tired, that's absolutely right. And that's always where it's hardest to maintain that, this is Goldilocks curve stuff where, oh, hello, where we're out of our out of sorts, as my gran would say. Well, can I ask, between the two models, I mean, there's obviously, they're almost identical apart from that inclusion of expectation. So do we think that the inclusion of expectation is helpful in understanding our interactions with people and how we react to things and so on? I mean, I think the SCARF model is probably a lot better known than maybe the Be Safe and Certain model. But if you're a SCARF user, would you now consider thinking about expectation as you use it?
Definitely, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's a very important element, because for a lot of people, I can see that this is something that pops up, how to deal with expectations. And this is a very strong topic. I mean, Alan referred to it, and also I know stories, and I mean, what I can see is that how can you let go of expectations? This is a really tough topic. So I think it's a very good element that needs to be added on top of that. Even though I can see that when we analyze, what is my reaction, what is the other's reaction, already thinking about it, there is the expectation. What do I expect? What do the others expect? So you have to really think about it. But being explicit, as we said it also during the SCARF model, that it gives certainty. So it gives that certainty that, oh, okay, we're talking about expectations. Right. So I really like that it's spelled out.
Yeah, me too. I think the second model is helpful because when at least when I know, oh, I'm putting my expectation on something and I'm very disappointed for some reason, right? And then I reflect on it, why, and always two questions comes up in my mind, like, is it my expectation that programmed from my childhood or my like trauma or my culture, like is it coming from me, or is it the situation or the environment is not fulfilling my needs or desire that is essential to me? So it always comes to figure out between those questions, and it's very confusing. So I think like try to differentiate between like the expectations that I have towards others and the others towards me, and the expectations towards myself. At least like dividing that and recognizing that, it's easier to navigate.
Mm. Mm. Andrea, how have you been doing with this evening? We haven't heard from you yet. Do you want to share anything, or are you happy to listen this evening?
I'm happy to listen this evening. Thank you. And I think to me, it depends in the situation I'm in, which word is most important. It's not word, it's the wrong word, but which point is the most important. Sometimes it's fairness, sometimes it's certainty, sometimes it's another point. So I think it's very dependent on the situation I am in.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. And Veronica, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, but you know what? I got here, Deirdre, a little bit later, so I got only half an hour, so I missed the model. So I hope I'll be able to watch the recording after
Oh,
that.
you will indeed. Yeah, thank you. We'll have the recording up in a day or two, so you'll definitely be able to get that. But you'll have to take suggestions then, I guess, from everybody else then for the next question, or the next start of a question, which is, are there any places where you can think of applying these models in your life or your work, as we've discussed them tonight? Or is there anything that you're thinking, gosh, you know what, if I'd been in that situation and I'd been thinking through these things this way, it would probably gone a lot smoother?
About the scarf model, I could think, I mean, also the be safe and certain, I would say it's the same, but for sure a wonderful way to use them are when you are in a conflict with somebody, because conflict really, it's a threat. I'm threatened from somebody else and somebody else is threatening me. So this is why we're in conflict eventually. If you go through the areas and understand where is my threat? I mean, this situation, this relationship, this incident is threatening my status, my certainty, my relatedness, or what? And if you do the same, if you go to the shoes, if you step into the shoes of the other side, and you try to think that they are right, so to take their role. So what is the threat from their side? And you understand that the conflict is because I am threatened for X reason and the other person is threatened for Y, Z reason. So then if you understand this, it's easier to see a way out of it, or around it anyway. So if it gives you some clarity.
Clarity, that's that's exactly, it's such a good word for it, Nicoletta. Yes. And you know, it's the, I use this tool quite a lot because I don't just use it for myself, but I would use it with clients as well. And you know, when we're going through things, quite often there are so many, if you can just like imagine a whole 3 or 4 different kinds of balls of wool all just knotted up together. And it's really, really hard to actually work out which strand to work on to disentangle it. So when you've got something like this, which breaks it down a little bit, it's almost like it's like the filter that we used in one of the previous sessions to try and arrive at what's the important thing. We can go, okay, you know what, let's look at the belonging aspect of this. Is that really something that is affecting me in this situation? And this is one of the ways that actually I'm going to try and find a link for. I do have one here. Laurie Shook, who created that Be Safe and Certain model, she has got a coaching demo that you can go and see if you wish. And she goes through the Be Safe and Certain model, but she has what she calls the traffic lights tool. So it's like, okay, we've got these 6 things, and if it's not playing into this, we'll give it a green light. But if it is actually impacting my ability to work through the situation, then it's a red light. But it just allows us to go, okay, right, I can put aside the idea of belonging in this instance because it doesn't apply, and let's work in what is it that is really, what clarity can I get from going through these and coming to, okay, actually, do you know what, I didn't realize, but I think this is terribly unfair. And then, you know, you've got, okay, well, if I now know that, and I know that this is what the kind of thing that makes me feel unfair, or makes me feel like I'm being treated unfairly, then I know where to start. I can find ways to rectify that. Whereas this big mess of emotions is very, very hard to take action on. So there's the link, if anyone wants to clip it and have a look at it later.
It's also what I find about these models, it somehow normalizes, you know, because when we have these high emotions, you know, these very unpleasant, generally we don't have a problem when it's pleasant, right? So we have the problem when it's an unpleasant, high intensity emotion, when you can't think, basically. This is the and we have a problem with that, and it just normalizes, and understanding that, you know, if you have a brain, you have this. So, and it gives you these words. And as you said, Nicoletta, it's great, for example, if it's in a team and it's not a conflict anymore, but, you know, you just say, so I sometimes work in teams, and we sometimes with these crazy neuroscience addicted people, and we just say words like autonomy, relatedness, and then we know threat, autonomy. So we actually can speak along these dimensions or domains, and the whole thing becomes a little bit funny as well. So it's more lighthearted, and
it's such a great shortcut, you know, because when we get into these situations, whether it is you know, a conflict situation or some other kind of a disagreement, where we are trying to, you know, we're trying to figure out what we're thinking ourselves and what other people are thinking, or, you know, we're maybe just caught up in the emotion, which I think is more likely when we're not actually thinking it through. But yeah, having this shorthand and the ability to identify things very quickly, even if that is just ourselves, but obviously the more people who know how to do this for themselves, who have thought about this and who are able to tap into that, then the quicker, the better, and the more productively we can all communicate.
And then we're back to the clarity. If we have clarity about ourselves, then it's much easier to communicate it clearly, to ask the right questions, and help even others to become clarity, to get clear about their thoughts and expressions.
Yeah. I mean, how many relationships could be saved by both parties being able to articulate their situation and their expectations and their feelings about belonging, or, you know, it's just so mind-blowing when we think about something this simple that could have so much impact, just on so many fields, so many spheres of life, from the boardroom, around the kitchen table, in the classroom. There's nowhere really that we can't use these tools.
Or even I think, in if I think about family, friends, in that sense, it's also letting it go. So you don't have to if the other person is not ready to do the same analysis, but you can let things go along these different domains, I think, because at the end of the day, you understand what is the real value there. So you just let it go, the perception.
And we haven't heard from Jisoo Yu. Oh, you're muted because you're in the same room. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna unmute. Sorry, I'm gonna mute myself and then she can speak if you want. No? Yes? Go ahead.
Yeah, we are in the same room, so it's working.
It's working.
Okay. So no, I'm just I thought about myself when you are talking. I have I think a lot of I thought a lot about expectation. Yeah, because what happened today to me. So today, actually, I'm trying to making art project nowadays, and it is changing every week. And today I had a phone call with my producer, and I said something. It's very small thing, and I said. I'm sorry that I'm changing a lot, and it should be very difficult to manage this and so on. So my expectation it was she saying to me, "Oh, it's okay, it's normal. This period, everything is changing. It doesn't matter. Don't worry." But she didn't say that. So he was more like quiet, and I didn't remember what she said exactly, but already she didn't reply exactly what I expected she say to me, and it disturbed me a lot. And oh, maybe yeah, she's thinking about and I have I'm thinking a lot also about judging. Yeah, I so many times think about how the other people judge me, and what they are gonna think of me and my project, and maybe she's thinking, oh, this I shouldn't take this project, or I mean, this is so difficult to manage, or something like that. So I was thinking about it, and also what you said about I should do this, and it should be like this. I should do that, and So yeah, it's I want to think about it, my emotion, my feeling, why it disturbed me, her reaction, and this expectation and judging, and
Judgment is a really interesting one, because if we are judged, then what is the risk that judgment brings?
Get to, well, say a wrong result. have more misunderstandings, get into conflicts, get into situations where I wouldn't have to be with a good communication.
And we associate judgment as well, quite often with worthiness. You know, judgment can be something that, if we don't typically talk about judgment in, I was judged worthy. We don't necessarily talk about it that way as often as we, again, negativity bias. We quite often look at being judged unworthy of something, unworthy of someone's attention or time or business or any of these other things. So again, what does it start to indicate a risk to if we're feeling judged?
It's again back to threat. You just feel threatened.
Yes, but in
Again,
which of the areas then can we find our way back to one of the points, one of the topics that's covered here, whether it's belonging or status or autonomy, or which of these is being tapped into by the feeling of being judged?
And also what comes up for me is, because I was thinking about it, how, for example, SCARF or Be Safe and Certain would play out in the world, because these models come from the US. I don't know, for example, Be Safe and Certain, where is she from?
I think Laurie is Canadian, but she, as far as I know, is based here in Europe, and has also worked in Eastern Europe as well.
So I would say maybe she's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean culture-wise, right? So we are kind of heavy loaded with the North America, Western Europe, if we talk about these models. And if you think about, Asia, so for example, Korea, for me, or Japan, very competitive, generally these countries. So, and this is, for them, my question is, is there something about intercultural differences that for certain, if we generalize, for certain society, status threat response can be stronger, because this is, I don't know if you mean for a competitive, because they learn at school and they have to compete. Or for example, in France, there are competitive exams. So they always measure, I'm not worthy to be accepted here. Oh, I am the 725th. So you always have to face this. So when I took exams, we didn't have that. So I don't have this competitivity, and I don't have this status. So I'm just asking questions. I don't know. It just came up for me.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good point, that like judgment is more like closed statement, like than expectation or any other kind of emotions. It just gives an answer by yourself that is highly related to worthiness, as Deirdre was saying. And yeah, I can totally see that from like the competitive culture, that like human is like, people are a source of resource to build up the nation, build up the economy. So there's less of a human value in that kind of competitive environment, I found. So if you're not well enough, you're not worthy. So it's effective and productive to the society as a whole, because they invest people who are like more like producing something value that's more effectively in a short amount of time and resource. And like Korea have to, like, I can say for other Asian countries, but like throughout war and like try to build up the new economy for like such a short amount of time, that was what's necessary. Like, not that that was good. So that like hugely influenced people's like social norms, and also like self-awareness and self-worthiness. And that's, I totally associate what Jisoo was saying about judging, because that's my extreme version of expectation. And that's how I always stuck into this like expectation problem, because if it's just expectation, I think it's better, but I judge myself that, okay, this is not meeting my expectations, so you're not worth it, so you're bad. And for other people to like to other people to like, oh, this is not working in a way that I want it to be, and okay, like we're done, like we can't do this anymore, like this is wrong. So it really comes from that, like what Gabriel was pointing out.
But I think the judgment is everywhere. I mean, it's here too, in Europe and in North America. And I mean, we heard Alan, but not just Alan, me too. And everybody has their own judge, you know.
Oh yes, the two women sitting behind my mother, they very much judged me.
You can silence that, yes, but they are there. Yeah.
That's true.
Bye, Nicoletta. It was great having you.
Thank you, Nicoletta.
Thank you. Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.
See you again. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I think we have, this has been really interesting, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing again your thoughts and your insights, and for being so open and curious, and for going through this with us, because it really does feel like a valuable tool. And I mean, I know, having used it, as I said, myself and with clients and so on, it just really does open things up for people in a very practical sort of way. So I do hope that you'll get value from it, and that you'll be able to apply it. I know, Veronica, you haven't really had a chance to hear it yet, but the two models are very, very similar. And as you'll see when you manage to get back to the replay, the key difference is in the inclusion of expectation in the second model. So.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, if I can just wrap it up, and before you sign off, just to put it on your radar, that the Brain Awareness Week is coming up between the 13th and 19th of March. And the NDI offers several online and in-person events under the umbrella of this week. You can find out more on the NeuroDevelopmentInstitute.com website under events. And Deirdre will put a link in the chat that will take you to the site. So just a recap, there will be a family learning event it will be a fun facts brain quiz for everyone. So every member of the family. Then there will be a lunch and learn event about brain optimization, the NDI Healthy Brain Buffet. We'll be repeating today's event for those who'd like to join in a live discussion and who couldn't join us today. And
also, sorry, Gabrielle, if I could just interrupt you there, but if you know someone who would benefit from this event again, it would really help if you can share this with them, because we would just love to get as many people as we can through events like these.
Yes. Thank you, Deirdre. Also, we will have a 3-hour workshop on the neuroscience and navigation of unpleasant feelings, which is a learning and practice event. We'll touch on some information from Lisa Feldman Barrett, Joan Rosenberg. Is that how we pronounce her name? Joan? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also there will be a live in-person workshop that will take place in Belfast, during which you can explore applied neuroscience with samurai wisdom. Sounds pretty exciting. My flyover. So if you enjoyed and found this event useful, please, I can just repeat, Deirdre, please tell other people who could benefit from these events to become a member of NDI and participate in our events. And those who sign up for the membership will have access to our resources and recordings. And this is where we officially say farewell. So thank you again for joining us. And we hope to see you when we return next month with loads of events. And we will stay on for another 15 minutes if you have any questions. And after that, the system automatically will shut the session. Hope to see you guys.
If I can just add one more thing about Brain Awareness Week, there are actually a few events that have not yet been added to the list, and they will include a conversation with Brenda Hershey of Try Global, and Try stands for Trauma Recovery Yoga. Brenda is currently out working in Kurdistan, delivering trauma recovery yoga to conflict survivors and so on there. She has been in Ukraine training people to deliver trauma recovery yoga there as well. So she's an absolutely wonderful practitioner, and I think she'll have a lot of really interesting things to say. Our theme for the week, by the way, is interrupting cycles, and this is one of the ways that is being deployed out in the real world.
I'm just happy that I didn't have to pronounce her name, so thank you. I'm not sure I could have done that. Great.
All right. Shall we turn off the recording then, and then we can just hang out if anyone wants to do that?
Great.